think we're the first person to make this claim. We have found Elvis Presley.
Long after the world was told Elvis Presley was gone, some never still believed it. Years passed, rumors flew, and strange stories kept coming up. Reports surfaced, records didn't line up, and clues stayed buried in plain sight. Each fact alone sounds harmless, but together they create evidence that contradicts the official story we heard. As time passed and silence continued, the mystery grew even deeper. For decades, this question kept echoing through time. What if Elvis was never truly gone? Join us as we delve into 5 mind-blowing facts that prove the king of rock and roll might just not be dead. The misspelled tombstone and official death certificate flaws. Elvis Presley's final resting place at Graceland holds secrets that millions of visitors walk past without noticing. The marble tombstone marking his grave displays his middle name as Aaron, spelled with 2 A's, a detail seen as insignificant until researchers examined the official records from his birth. Every single document from Elvis's entire life shows his middle name spelled differently, with just 1 A as Aaron. His birth certificate, school records, military papers, and marriage licenses all confirm this original spelling. The change on the tombstone raises an obvious question about why someone would get such a basic detail wrong on a permanent memorial. The explanation offered by Graceland officials centers on a supposed family preference. They claim Elvis's father, Vernon, wanted the biblical spelling with 2 A's on the grave marker. They suggest this was a spiritual choice made during grief. However, Elvis himself never used this spelling during his 42 years of life. He signed millions of autographs, countless legal documents, and personal letters, always using the single A version. The inconsistency becomes even more weird when considering how carefully Vernon managed his son's estate and legacy. A grieving father making such a fundamental change seems unlikely given the circumstances. The official death certificate contains its own collection of troubling details that researchers have documented extensively. The attending physician's signature appears rushed and somewhat illegible compared to his other medical documents from that period. The time of demise listed as 3:30 p.m. conflicts with emergency responder reports and hospital records that suggest different timelines. Medical professionals who examined copies of the certificate pointed out unusual terminology and phrasing not typically used in standard death documentation from that era. The certificate was also filed quickly given the circumstances surrounding such a high-profile case. Medical examiners noted specific problems with the autopsy report that was sealed immediately after completion. The official cause of was listed as cardiac arrhythmia, essentially a heart attack. However, the detailed findings were locked away from public view for 50 years, an unusually long time for such records. Standard practice involves releasing autopsy information much sooner, especially for public figures where transparency serves the public interest. The extended seal period fueled speculation about what details the report might contain that authorities wanted to hide from scrutiny. Forensic experts who gained limited access to portions of the autopsy report found inconsistencies in the medical findings. The toxicology results showed multiple prescription medications in Elvis's system, but the levels and combinations didn't align perfectly with the stated cause of demise. Some specialists argued the findings were more consistent with someone who was sedated rather than someone who succumbed to sudden cardiac arrest. The liver and organ descriptions contained medical terminology that seemed oddly vague. These professionals noted that autopsy reports typically include very specific measurements and detailed observations that appeared missing or abbreviated in this case. The embalming process happened with unusual speed according to funeral home records and staff interviews from that time. Elvis's body was prepared incredibly fast, much quicker than standard procedures normally allow. Embalmers typically take several hours to properly preserve a body, especially one that will be publicly viewed. The rush timeline suggested either extraordinary efficiency or possible advanced preparation. Some mortuary professionals found the accelerated schedule suspicious, given the careful work required for an open casket viewing, attended by thousands of people. Hospital staff members who were present on August 16, 1977, reported strange protocols that differed from normal emergency procedures. The treatment room was cleared of most personnel, limiting witnesses to the resuscitation attempts. Security measures seemed unusually tight, even considering Elvis's celebrity status. Several nurses and doctors noted these departures from standard practice in their personal accounts years later. The restricted access and heightened secrecy added to questions about what really happened during those crucial hours. The preservation of Elvis's body for viewing purposes required special embalming work according to funeral industry standards. His face needed to look peaceful and recognizable for the thousands of mourners who would pay their respects. The embalmer faced enormous pressure to create a presentable appearance despite the reported condition of the body. Some experts suggested the excellent result seemed almost too perfect given the circumstances. The flawlessness sparked theories about whether advanced techniques were used or whether the body in the casket was actually Elvis at all. Official records show multiple people signed off on various documents related to Elvis's passing and burial. Each signature carried legal weight and professional responsibility, yet the collection of papers contains discrepancies that don't perfectly align across all forms. These minor inconsistencies might mean nothing more than clerical errors during crisis. However, researchers analyzing the documents note that the pattern of small mistakes appears throughout multiple unrelated forms, meaning the frequency of these errors exceeds what would normally be expected even with the stressful circumstances surrounding such a major event. The wax dummy theory and funeral observations. The viewing line at Graceland stretched for blocks as thousands of mourners waited to pay their final respects to Elvis Presley. The August heat beat down on Memphis as fans stood for hours, many traveling from distant states to say goodbye. Inside the mansion, the copper casket sat in the foyer, surrounded by elaborate flower arrangements. The air conditioning worked overtime to keep the room cool for viewing. Security guards maintained careful watch over the steady stream of visitors filing past. Each mourner received only seconds to look at Elvis before being moved along by the staff. Several people near the front of the line noticed something unusual about Elvis's appearance in the casket. His face looked oddly smooth and perfect, almost artificial in its flawless composition. The makeup appeared thick and heavily applied, more theatrical than the typical funeral preparation. His nose especially caught the attention of multiple observers who commented on its waxy texture and unnatural shine. Some mourners who knew Elvis personally felt his features didn't look quite right, though they struggled to articulate exactly what seemed off about his appearance. Gene Smith, Elvis's cousin who grew up with him and worked for him for years, stood near the casket during the private family viewing. He reached out and touched Elvis's face, despite the usual prohibition against such contact. The moment stayed with him for decades as he described the experience in later interviews. The skin felt wrong under his fingers, not like human flesh even considering the embalmment. The texture reminded him more of rubber or wax than actual tissue. The temperature didn't match what he expected from a body that had been dead for hours. The experience troubled him deeply, and he shared his concerns with other family members present. Multiple attendees reported seeing moisture forming on Elvis's forehead and upper lip during the viewing. Small beads that looked like sweat appeared on the face, despite the cool temperature maintained in the room. Funeral professionals know that bodies don't sweat after death, making this observation particularly strange. Some witnesses assumed the moisture came from the heavy makeup melting under the lights. Others wondered if condensation formed on the waxy surface due to temperature differences. The phenomenon appeared throughout the viewing period as different groups of people filed past at various times. The casket itself raised questions among those who helped carry it and those who observed the burial process. The weight was excessive, even when accounting for Elvis's size and the copper construction. Pallbearers struggled with the load more than expected based on their experience with similar caskets. Yet industry standards suggest the combined weight should have been manageable for the 6 strong men selected for the task. The difficulty they experienced made people wonder if there were additional contents inside the casket. Some theorized that cooling equipment was hidden inside to prevent a wax figure from melting in the summer heat. Close friends who visited during the private viewing before the public was admitted shared their observations with each other. They noticed Elvis's hands looked particularly artificial, positioned in an unnatural way that didn't match how he typically held himself. The fingers appeared stiff and sculptured rather than relaxed. Several people commented on how the body seemed to lack the familiar details they had witnessed at other funerals. The peaceful expression looked almost rehearsed, too perfect to be natural. These observers kept their doubts private during the funeral, but discussed them extensively in the years that followed. The lighting in the viewing room was carefully controlled and positioned to showcase the casket. The spotlights illuminated Elvis from specific angles while shadows fell across other areas. Funeral directors typically arrange lighting to present the deceased in the most flattering way possible. However, some observers noted the strategic placement seemed designed to conceal certain details rather than simply enhance the viewing. The shadows fell across the neck area and ears, parts that might show evidence of prosthetic work if examined closely. The careful light management struck some professional funeral attendees as unusual. Medical professionals attending the funeral noticed details that seemed inconsistent with a body that had been dead for nearly a full day. The color of the skin appeared very vibrant and lifelike compared to typical post-mortem presentation. The absence of certain expected signs of death surprised those with training in recognizing such details. Bodies undergo specific changes in the hours after demise that were curiously absent or minimal in this case. These observations remained mostly unspoken at the time due to the emotional atmosphere and respect for the grieving family. The embalming process for Elvis was handled with extraordinary speed and privacy. The funeral home staff worked behind closed doors with minimal outside observation. Industry insiders noted the rushed timeline seemed unnecessary unless there was a specific reason to complete the preparation quickly. The lack of transparency in the process clashed with typical procedures for public figures, where many professionals often observe to ensure proper protocols. The secretive approach to preparing Elvis's body for viewing supported theories about what really lay in that copper casket during those sweltering August days in Memphis. Sightings and photographic evidence post-1977. A tourist visiting Graceland in early 1970 right-aimed her camera at the mansion's famous front entrance. She wanted to capture the iconic white columns and the memorial wreaths left by fans. After developing her film back home, she noticed something strange in the photograph's background. A man stood partially visible near the side of the building, his profile showing features that looked strikingly similar to Elvis. The hair, build, and posture all matched the unique characteristics known to millions. The photograph circulated among Elvis fan clubs, and researchers spent years analyzing the image for signs of manipulation or misidentification. The quality of the photograph made definitive identification impossible, but experts who examined it found no evidence of tampering or double exposure. The mysterious figure appeared naturally integrated into the scene with proper lighting and perspective. The stance and bearing matched Elvis's typical body language from a lot of known photographs. Researchers noted specific details like shoulder width and head shape that aligned with Elvis's proportions. The timing of the photograph, just months after the funeral, made the sighting particularly significant to those questioning the official story. A woman in Kalamazoo, Michigan, walked into a Burger King one afternoon in 1988 looking for a quick lunch. She noticed a man sitting alone in a corner booth who immediately caught her attention. His face looked incredibly familiar, despite the casual clothes and attempt at anonymity. The man wore sunglasses inside the restaurant and kept his head slightly lowered while eating. Something about his profile and the way he moved his hands seemed recognizable. she managed to snap a quick photograph with her camera before he left the restaurant through a side exit. The resulting image showed a man who bore an uncanny resemblance to Elvis Presley. The facial structure, hairline, and build all matched, despite the years that had passed. The man in the photograph appeared older and heavier than Elvis in known pictures, but the aging seemed natural. Facial recognition experts who later checked the image noted several key markers that aligned with Elvis's documented features. The distinctive curve of the jaw, the set of the eyes, and the shape of the ears all corresponded to Elvis's exact characteristics. The photograph became one of the most discussed pieces of evidence among researchers investigating Elvis sighting claims. Multiple witnesses in the Kalamazoo area reported seeing a man matching Elvis's description during the same time period. A grocery store clerk remembered helping someone who looked exactly like older Elvis with his shopping. A gas station attendant recalled serving a customer whose voice and mannerisms reminded him strongly of the famous singer. A librarian described a patron who spent hours in the music section examining books about Memphis and the history of rock and roll. These separate accounts from unconnected witnesses created a compelling pattern. None of the witnesses knew each other or had communicated about their experiences before investigators connected the reports. A hotel in a small Tennessee town near the Mississippi border maintained registration records that drew attention from researchers. A guest checked in using the name John Burroughs in late 1977, just months after Elvis's reported demise. This name appeared in Elvis's personal papers as an alias he used when traveling privately during his lifetime. The signature in the hotel registry showed handwriting characteristics similar to Elvis's known style. The guest paid cash and requested a room away from the main building with minimal interaction with staff. Hotel employees who remembered the visit described a man who kept to himself and wore sunglasses even in dim lighting. The physical description of the John Burroughs guest matched Elvis's appearance down to specific details. He stood approximately 6 feet tall with a heavy build and dark hair showing some gray. Staff members noted his polite Southern manner and distinctive speaking voice. One housekeeper mentioned that the guest left the room exceptionally neat and organized, a habit Elvis was known for during his touring days. The man checked out early one morning before most staff arrived, leaving no forwarding information. The combination of the alias usage, physical description, and timing created another data point for those tracking possible Elvis sightings. A man resembling Elvis appeared in the background of several amateur pictures and home videos taken at various locations in the late 1970s and 80s. These images came from unrelated sources across different states with no connection between the photographers. The recurring appearance of similar features in multiple independent images suggested either an amazing series of coincidences or something more significant. Analysis of these photographs showed consistent aging patterns and physical characteristics across the timeline. The man appeared progressively older in images from later years in a way that matched natural aging progression from Elvis's last known appearance. Investigators compiled reports from people who claimed to have had brief interactions with someone they believed was Elvis in various locations. A bookstore owner in Colorado described helping a man who asked specifically for books about changing identities and starting new lives. A postal worker in New Mexico recalled a customer who bore a striking resemblance to Elvis, picking up packages addressed to various names. These scattered reports created a map of possible sightings that stretched across multiple states over several years, suggesting someone deliberately moving around to avoid detection. Financial motives and mounting debt pressures. Elvis Presley's financial situation in 1977 looked nothing like what most fans imagined for one of the biggest stars in entertainment history. Despite decades of record sales and sold-out concerts, his money flowed out faster than it came in. The IRS had been investigating his tax returns and questioning deductions claimed over several years. The federal tax agency sent notice after notice demanding payment for back taxes and penalties. The amounts kept growing with interest and fees piling onto the original debt. Elvis faced the possibility of liens against Graceland and his other properties if the situation remained unresolved. Colonel Tom Parker's gambling addiction had created a separate financial nightmare that threatened Elvis's stability. The manager owed huge sums to Las Vegas casinos from years of heavy betting. Casino executives knew Parker managed Elvis and viewed the singer's earning potential as collateral for the manager's debts. Parker's contracts with Elvis gave him an unusually high percentage of earnings, sometimes as much as 50% of gross income. This arrangement meant Elvis worked constantly just to maintain cash flow, while Parker's gambling losses consumed large portions of the revenue. The relationship had become a financial trap that Elvis struggled to escape. The expense of maintaining Graceland and Elvis's lifestyle drained resources at an unsustainable rate. The mansion required a full staff including cooks, housekeepers, security personnel, and groundskeepers. Elvis kept his friends and family members on the payroll whether they worked or not. He bought cars and gifts impulsively, sometimes purchasing multiple Cadillacs in a single day to give away. His generosity became legendary but also financially reckless. The monthly costs of running his household exceeded what many people earned in years, and the spending patterns showed no signs of slowing despite the mounting financial pressures. 3 former bodyguards were preparing to publish a book that threatened to expose Elvis's private life explicitly. Red West, Sonny West, and Dave Hebler had worked closely with Elvis for years before being fired. Their book promised to reveal details about prescription pill use, erratic behavior, and the darker side of life at Graceland. Publishers were offering substantial advances for the manuscript based on the explosive nature of the content. Elvis knew the book would damage his carefully maintained public image and possibly lead to legal problems. Worst of all, the publication date was approaching, and he had no legal way to stop it. Lawsuits from various sources added to the mounting legal and financial troubles. Former employees were suing over wrongful termination and unpaid wages. Business partners claimed breach of contract over failed ventures and canceled projects. Several paternity suits demanded financial support and DNA testing. Each lawsuit required expensive legal representation and the potential for costly settlements or judgments. The legal fees alone were eating into Elvis's remaining liquid assets. His attorneys advised him that several of the cases looked difficult to defend and might result in significant financial losses. The value of Elvis's estate had been declining as expenses exceeded income from royalties and concert revenues. Graceland itself carried a large mortgage that required monthly payments. The touring schedule that generated income was becoming physically difficult for Elvis to maintain. His health issues made performing exhausting, and doctors warned about the strain on his body. Yet he needed to keep working to pay the bills and service the debts. The situation created a vicious cycle where financial pressure forced him to work despite medical concerns, while the work itself worsened his health problems. Record sales had started declining as musical tastes changed, and younger artists dominated the charts. Elvis's most recent albums were not performing as well commercially as his earlier releases. Radio stations played his older hits but showed less interest in new material. The changing music industry meant his earning potential from recordings was diminishing. Concert tickets still sold based on his legendary status, but even that revenue was split unfavorably due to Parker's contract terms. The financial model that had sustained Elvis for decades was breaking down. Some researchers analyzing Elvis's financial situation noted an interesting pattern in how celebrity estates often became more valuable after passing. Merchandising rights, music catalogs, and image licensing typically generated more revenue for estates than for living artists. Record sales skyrocketed for several musicians who lost their lives at a young age. The Beatles members who had passed away became more valuable commercially than when they were alive. This pattern suggested that Elvis's estate would be worth more if he was not alive to spend the money and make financial decisions. The cold mathematics of celebrity economics created a perverse incentive structure. With all these, Elvis was caught in a trap with no clear way out through normal means. Bankruptcy would destroy his image and legacy. Working at the current pace might cost him his life through stress and exhaustion. Selling Graceland would devastate him emotionally and anger his fans. Every conventional solution carried unacceptable consequences. Some theorists suggest this financial desperation created the motivation to consider extreme alternatives. A disappearance would stop the lawsuits, end the financial obligations, and potentially allow his estate to become profitable in ways that were impossible while he was still alive. Government connections and witness protection theory. Elvis Presley's fascination with law enforcement began long before his famous visit to the White House. He collected police badges from departments across the country and studied criminology books in his private library. His interest went beyond hobbyist enthusiasm into actual involvement with investigating agencies. Elvis built relationships with police officers and federal agents during his tours, offering information about suspicious activities he saw in the entertainment industry. These connections grew more serious as organized crime's influence in music venues and recording businesses became obvious during the 70s. The meeting between Elvis and President Richard Nixon in December 1970 produced one of the most requested photographs in National Archives history. Elvis went to the White House unannounced with a handwritten letter requesting a meeting. The letter expressed his desire to help fight substance use and assist federal agencies in understanding youth culture. Nixon granted the meeting, and Elvis left the Oval Office with a Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs badge that carried actual authority. It gave Elvis legitimate status as a federal agent at large, a position that came with responsibilities and access to law enforcement information. Federal documents released decades later revealed Elvis's involvement in multiple investigations during the early and mid-1970s. He provided information about illegal substance trading in the industry and helped identify connections between entertainment venues and organized crime operations. Elvis traveled constantly for performances, giving him access to locations and people across the country. His celebrity status allowed him to move in circles that normal investigators could not easily penetrate. His observations and tips led to several successful investigations into criminal enterprises operating within the entertainment world. The information Elvis provided to federal agencies put him in contact with dangerous people who finally learned about his cooperation with authorities. Organized crime figures take betrayal seriously and respond harshly to informants. Several figures who cooperated with law enforcement faced threats and intimidation during this period. Elvis's high profile made direct action against him risky, but criminal organizations had ways of sending messages. His security team noticed increased surveillance and suspicious individuals appearing at concerts and near Graceland. The threats turned so serious that federal agents discussed protection options with Elvis and his security chief. The Federal Witness Protection Program was established in 1970, the same year Elvis met with Nixon and received his federal badge. The program relocated witnesses and informants who faced danger due to their cooperation with investigations. Participants received new identities, housing assistance, and ongoing security monitoring. The program was designed for people whose testimony or information put their lives at risk from criminal retaliation. While typically used for trial witnesses, the program's scope included informants who provided intelligence that led to successful prosecutions. Elvis's situation potentially qualified him for such protection if the threat level became severe enough. Several major organized crime prosecutions in the mid-1970s relied partly on information gathered from entertainment industry sources. Federal prosecutors built cases against mob-connected concert promoters and venue owners who were extorting performers and laundering money through ticket sales. Elvis's name never appeared in public court papers, but investigators with knowledge of these cases later claimed that confidential informants from the music world provided crucial details, The success of these cases would have increased danger for any informants whose involvement became known to the targeted organizations. Elvis's link to law enforcement went beyond the federal level to include local police departments in Memphis and other cities. He funded equipment purchases for police departments and maintained close friendships with officers. These relationships gave him insight into investigative techniques and security protocols. He learned about identity protection methods and how people could disappear when necessary. His interest in these topics went beyond casual curiosity, according to officers who worked with him. He asked detailed questions about witness protection procedures and how someone with a famous face could successfully take on a new identity. The logistics of faking a death and entering witness protection would require government cooperation at multiple levels. Medical examiners, hospital personnel, funeral home workers, and law enforcement agents would all need to participate or stay silent. This level of coordination seems impossible unless authorities had compelling reasons to facilitate the deception. The protection of a valuable informant who helped bring down significant criminal operations could provide such drive. Federal agencies have admitted to using extraordinary measures to protect important witnesses in the past, so the techniques creating new identities were well developed by that time. Some researchers point to the sealed autopsy records and unusual security around Elvis's demise as evidence of government involvement. The 50-year seal period exceeds normal practice and suggests information requiring long-term protection. The speed and secrecy of the funeral arrangements mirror protocols used in sensitive government operations. The presence of federal agents in Memphis around the time of Elvis's death was documented but never fully explained. These elements combine to create a picture of an operation that went beyond a simple celebrity demise. The theory suggests Elvis's cooperation with federal investigations created a situation where authorities had both motivation and means to help him disappear into a protected new life away from both fame and criminal threats that his informant work had generated. The evidence surrounding Elvis's demise raises questions that remain unanswered decades later. From tombstone errors to suspicious sightings, from crushing debts to government connections, each piece adds weight to theories questioning the official story. Whether Elvis truly passed away in 1977 or disappeared into protection may never be definitively proven. What are your thoughts on the idea that Elvis Presley is still alive? Let us know your views in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.